guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. So a few things. I've had a lot of questions about yoga. The plan is to have yoga the third Monday of every month before this support group. I plan on adding a pre-op class before the second Tuesday one, so that one will be more for like new folks that are probably in the pre-op stages, right? They're going to come in and learn about what to expect in the hospital and then have a support group afterwards. And so anybody's welcome to come to any of these, right? Because the goal is that, number one, you're here to get support, but sometimes you're able to mentor and support other patients that are either about to go through surgery or fresh out and that sort of thing. So just know that about the yoga. That's already booked all the way through the end of the year that we've got her secured, which is great. We are planning on doing another cooking class. The goal is to have that every month. We're still kind of tweaking like what date, and hopefully we'll get a consistency about when of the month that we're going to do it. But who else was there with me at that cooking class? Gorgeous kitchen, awesome space, excited to be able to use it. Lots of good technology in there. And so we actually had a local chef from Atlanta come up, and he was quite entertaining. But between him and Giselle, they prepared a meal for us, and we had some good protein, but we also had some other things. Like if you're on the puree diet, we had some options for that. And then, if you're feeling like you want something sweet, we did a really cool yogurt parfait, which was pretty neat because they took a high protein granola, and they also took some almonds and they put it in a blender and just really made it really super fine, but it also gave it a little bit of crunch, which was nice. So just different options, but what I loved about it is that we created a template for recipe cards. So on the front you had a shopping list. You flip it over, it gives you the directions on how to make the recipe that they just did for you, but it was something that you can take home that evening. We have some of those recipes upstairs. My goal is to save them every time we do a cooking class. We'll have like a recipe wall upstairs in our space. We can share that with both practices. So you go see your doc or your dietitian in the office, you can have access to that as well. And then who knows, eventually we may make a cookbook. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But what I was sharing with a few people is the dietitians in the office, both Jennifer and Sheena, have agreed to start thinking through what they would like to do, and for them to come join us maybe on a rotational basis, and then throw in a local chef here and there, just to kind of keep things exciting and interesting. When you're trying to meal plan, a lot of times you kind of get stuck in a rut, and you're like, I need something new to do. And so that's the hope with the cooking class. We did finally get approval for a Facebook page. So we have our YouTube live that we do for every support group, yoga, cooking class. So YouTube is something that's in the works. We're probably still about another month out, but they have to kind of go through the hospital process of getting that created for us. But my hope is that we can get that soon, and that way it's just an easy breezy way of like communicating to the masses of anybody that wants to join our closed Facebook that's a patient of ours. So we hope to keep people informed with that. Trying to think if there's anything else. We did just talk about the renovation. We're supposed to have renovation up in Suite 260 upstairs. So most of it's really going to be like carpet, paint, widening of the doorways for better access for wheelchairs. But we are going to gain a clothing closet out of that, which I'm super excited about that. So if you know anybody who's spring cleaning and who's kind of getting rid of really what we're going to probably be more of a hurt for is the smaller sizes, right? Because our patients are losing weight. You guys are going to be wanting those smaller sizes. So if you have any friends, coworkers that you overhear, hey, I'm going to go donate clothes, ask them to consider donating to us. So in a couple months, we hope to have that up and running. I've had one before in the past, and it's just a really nice, you come in either for support group or to see the dietitian, or you can just drop in whenever and go shop. And sometimes you'll hear some of us, even in the doctor's offices, say, your clothes are getting baggy as you start to go through the process. And we're like, you need to go check out the clothing closet. I had one guy, I'll never forget, he went back there and he loaded up. He was so excited. He had the biggest smile on his face. He was like, I just got a new wardrobe, So excited to offer that as a resource to you guys as well. So tonight, one of the things I was going to talk about is emotional adjustments after weight loss surgery. And so, surgery, when I compare how our patients feel immediately post-op, how the surgery's performed, a lot of that for my nursing brain very much equals a patient who's had a gallbladder out. not only is the death rate associated with that surgery about the same, but the way that the patient presents afterwards is very similar, right? The physical piece. Now, some people will struggle a little bit more with nausea or spasms if they've had the sleeve gastrectomy, different things like that. But for the most part, the patient is pretty typical surgical patient. But it's not, is it? Right? So I've taken care of patients after surgery, for example, who maybe struggled with nausea or really struggled with a lot of emotional depression related to the loss of their friend called food. And patients in the first few weeks can sometimes go through a period of time where emotionally they're really struggling. And I call it buyer's remorse. You know, you go buy a brand new car and then you get home and you're thinking, maybe I didn't get the best deal, or maybe I shouldn't have chosen this color or whatever. And you have buyer's remorse of what did I do? And sometimes our patients go through that. But there's a lot of emotional things that our patients go through, not only immediately post-op, but throughout their time as they lose weight, because a lot of things change, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. So to start out, I'm just going to talk through some of the comments that people make, either as they're in the middle of dealing with their obesity and their struggles related to that, or as people go through weight loss surgery. So I'm going to share some of these, and I'm certain that some of these are going to ring true for some of you. I look in the mirror, but I'm not really sure who's looking back at me. And this could be if you're recognizing yourself in the mirror after you've put on some weight, or you can look at it at a different perspective as you drastically lose weight and you're trying to figure out where's the new you in there. I look at my body and I wonder how on earth I've allowed myself to get this way. I just don't have the energy. And one of these is talking about having children. I see the disappointment in my children's faces when they ask me to play, but I don't have the energy nor the will to move. That's hard. I avoid public places, and I fear the stares and comments that may come. I look at my closet and I realize that the majority of my clothes consist of blue and black stretch pants and wide slip-on shoes. Here's a big one. I dread traveling. And for some patients, they worry, am I going to fit on the airplane? Do I need to ask for an extender? And one of these says, I hide my seatbelt so I don't have to ask for an extender because I'm embarrassed. I go to the grocery store to go shopping at night so that I'm not judged. Some people struggle with bathroom habits that become more difficult. Walking shorter distances feels like I've run a marathon. I'm always hot and sweating even if it's cold outside. I no longer feel attractive towards my significant other. I've lost my sense of self. I am scared that today may be my last. So I've cared for many, many weight loss surgery patients in the past, but I can tell you I've had support group before with some of our super morbidly obese patients, and I've really had some concerns with patients that were falling asleep in support group that I knew had severe sleep apnea. Sometimes, you know, when patients come here, it's not because, hey, I chose to do this, it's because their doctor said, you got to do this. You've got to do this for yourself. And even that elicits some different emotions of how do I feel about that, you know? So I share that with you at the beginning so that we can kind of talk through some scenarios of the emotions that some of you may be experiencing, and you're very willing and open, I hope, to kind of share with each other if one of you's felt it and the other one says, I'm going through that or I've been there. And then towards the end, what we'll talk about is we will talk through some situations, 7 steps to improving emotional adjustments post-surgery. But one thing I want to share before we go any further, and I'll remind you guys at the end, is that we have lots of resources for counseling. My goal right now as the program manager is to add a behavioral health specialist to our team. And so I'm kind of working behind the scenes so that we can incorporate somebody here And I know that over at NGPG, Dr. Wynn's office, they do have somebody that's embedded in their program that you guys are open to see as well. But I want you guys to know that NGPG, our Northeast Georgia Physicians Group, actually sees patients a lot of different places, far-reaching. So they have places where you can go in Bethlehem, Brazelton, Cleveland, Flowery Branch, 3 different Gainesville locations. One's down at Thompson Mill. There's an urgent care facility. I have a typo on here, so forgive that. But the NGPG, where Dr. Wynn's office is, Oakwood, Toccoa Clinic, Toccoa Foothills, lots of different places. I also have a resource on here for those of you who may be in Atlanta off Claremont Road. So a lot of different resources, but my goal for us as a program is that we would have somebody here that you guys could go to. And even if you're not interested or you don't feel like it, somebody else in our group or somebody in our program that you run into, if you overhear somebody talking about struggling, let them know they're not alone. We're here to support you at support group, but this can't be it for somebody who's really going through some issues and struggling. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that that support is there. I hope to grow it even more than this, but this is a great resource, and I've got a flyer here that I can give you guys here at the end. So some of the other things on here, it talks about that being obese can become your identity, and that there's so much shame and guilt. Patients very frequently come in struggling with anxiety, with depression. Some of them struggle with relationships, and some folks think if I have weight loss surgery and get my weight under control, then my relationship's going to get better. And then after weight loss surgery, does that fix the relationship? And sometimes it makes it even more complicated or complex if they're not getting what they need from that particular person through this. So what can happen though, the positive side of weight loss surgery that I've seen time and time again, and I wish that I could just kind of foreshadow for some patients before they even go through surgery, but some of the positives is the increase in energy. Depression can get better. Sometimes you got to have therapy to help it get better, and sometimes medications, but the depression can get better. Self-confidence, I think, is the biggest thing I wish I could bottle up and give out as a gift, because that's the most enjoyable thing that I see, and I know that our staff and our practices see as well, because we can see patients beforehand and we can already know where they're going to be in 6 months, where they can't sometimes even see. So that's one of the most enjoyable things that I see. But some areas of your life can change, and I'd like us to talk a little bit about this. Your career could change after surgery. I had a man come to me, this was probably 10 years ago, but he came for weight loss surgery, and he didn't say, I want to enjoy more time with family, I want to enjoy a more active lifestyle. He came to me and he straight up said, I think I'm being passed over for promotions, and I'm done, and I got to do something about it, you know. Sometimes your relationships in your career can change, and you know, sometimes you mingle with your coworkers, and some people you'll find are supportive and some people are not supportive. There was a lady that was here at some point last month, and I can't remember which support group it was, but she was talking, she was a nurse and she worked on the floor, and she was saying that her coworkers were very supportive of her, and they were like very thoughtful, like if they had a get together, they're like, what can you eat? I want to make sure that you have something that you can eat. So talk to me a little bit about that. Have any of you guys experienced that in your workplace or with coworkers? Yep. You want to share anything? You don't have to. It's
well,
okay.
No, I work for a nurse practitioner, and she is constantly cooking. And whenever I first went to work for her, and she knew that I had gastric bypass, and so she was constantly going, okay, what can you eat? It's just like this morning she told me, she said, all right, refresh me on what you can. So you can't have pasta and you can't have rice. And I was like, right. And she was like, okay, can you have potatoes? And I was like, very small, very infrequently.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, she's really good, because I mean, she tries to, if she makes something, to make it where I can have some of it.
How does that make you feel for her to ask?
She's considerate instead of just bringing something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a wonderful cook.
disrespectful to me. What about the rest of you?
I kind of want to say something. It's going to sound weird. First off, I'm be 20 years out in June, but I've had complications, and I've been suddenly completely thrown back on a full liquid diet without the expectation that was going to happen. When I saw Dr. Wynn last week, he extended it 2 to 4 more weeks, which I did not expect. So one of the things I'm struggling with, like right now, this week, I'm on the town council in Claremont, and a lot of our municipality meetings are held with catered dinners or catered lunches, and up to this setback, I kind of thought I had a handle on it. And next week we have a Joint Municipalities Association meeting in Oakwood that's being catered, and it's kind of like there's not one darn thing on that menu I can touch, which is depressing. Really is depressing right now. The other thing is either I'm going to have to take what I need and want, especially with being back on the full liquid or the puree. I'm going to have to ask the secretary to save a seat at the table for me so that I can come after the meal. And I hate calling attention to that. I hate it. And I'm just coming to terms this last week as these emails are going in and out with how much I hate and feel depressed about being thrown back where I was 20 years ago without that expectation, or 20 years ago I had 6 months to prep for it.
Yeah.
I had total expectation of what I was going to be doing, when I was going to be doing it, the counseling, everything. And this complication just came out of nowhere, and it's knocked me on my butt with how to deal it and not make it apparent to the rest of my world.
So let me ask, the meeting, I hear a lot of anxiety from that. That meeting that's coming up, the meal that's catered, is there a time where they're going to stop and you guys are going to eat, or is it supposed to be like a working meeting?
Right now what it is you have like from, and I can't remember the exact times, I think it was something like 5:30 to 6:15 was the catered meal, and then 6:15 on is the meeting. But the ones I've been to in the past, you're kind of nibbling during the meal.
Yeah.
And I could kind of get by with that because I could still eat. And it's like I'm going to a political kickoff thing that's supposed to be going to one Wednesday that's being held at Stevie B's, and it's like, how comfortable am I going to be walking in with my protein shake or my vitamin water, my bariatric life? I mean,
Do you feel like you'd be judged?
I don't know right now because I'm judging me.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's the honest truth. I'm judging.
Because I honestly don't think anybody else would think about it, but I think that you're thinking a lot more about it. And for the other one, I guess my question would be, could you show up late, like could you show up at the end of the dinner, or could you go for a walk, like with a meal replacement or something during that time if it was like a breakout session in between?
Yeah,
what kind of advice do you guys have for her?
I'd like some suggestions, because like I said, I've kind of built this up in my head probably way more than it should be. But with that last set of emails I got this afternoon, it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
So my full liquids got extended and extended and extended and extended because I had a stricture in my esophagus. I had a previous surgery, and they had messed up my prior surgery. So this surgery was really to fix that surgery, and it ended up being a bypass, which so this way it's okay, I'm good.
Yep.
No reflux, and I get to this way, so it's all good. But because of the damage to my esophagus from the first surgery, it didn't really like what happened in but because I needed liquids and there was no soup or liquid. It was pasta and you were there. I mean, it was like the worst menu for anyone who's trying to lose weight, whether you had surgery or not. And salad was like the only healthy option. Well, you certainly can't eat salad if you can't swallow puree. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, and it's like in the middle of the day, and you know, I didn't have access to a refrigerator, so I had to eat everything room temperature, and it was like, and so I was less than kind, so I found myself getting angry that everyone else was enjoying pasta, which is one of my favorites, and salad, which is another favorite, and I couldn't have either one. So I took my little protein shake self and I went out the door, and one of the people coordinating was like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's hot in here. I just need some air." And I just went out because I've not been one that really shared a lot at work, mainly because I don't have a particularly supportive boss. And so I had to just make an excuse to exit and go for a little walk. It was raining. I didn't care. I was dressed as a cat because I dressed up from.
But it really wasn't anybody else's business, right?
Right. Well, you can always say, "I'm not hungry," or "I wasn't feeling well earlier, so I'm just going to drink this protein shake."
Right, and
back
for
off.
me, I had to, when I was on the liquids, I had to much more frequently take something in because I felt horrible. Sue had a one that was more of a meal replacement.
Yes.
Instead of just protein, and that helped switching to that from a straight protein.
One that I have samples of, and you're welcome to these when we're done, is Bariatric Advantage meal replacements.
Yes, that's what
I actually had one for lunch, and for some recipes you can add a little bit of fruit to it. I felt like I'd eaten an entire meal. It's very filling, and so at least, yes, you're drinking it, but at least when you're done, you feel as if you have eaten something. But up here, you got to do something during that time, right?
Yeah, because I was hateful.
Especially if there's other people around you eating. So
I was just like.
So tell me this: what about friendships? Friendships change, right? You will find, some of you, and I'm sure some of you have felt this way too, that some friends are really supportive, and some people say they're supportive, but their actions show you differently. So how does that impact you emotionally?
So I was, and she totally didn't realize what she was saying. I was rounding at another one of our facilities. I worked for the health system, and I would cover all of the campuses. About to go. Anyway, I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but I was in a meeting, and it was this person, the CNO from that facility, and me, and she's like, "You had weight loss surgery, didn't you? You took the easy way out," in front of this group of people that I had not told I had any kind of surgery. And I'm standing there like dumbfounded, like I don't even know what to say to you right now because I can't believe you're a nurse and you're a med surg nurse and you would be this stupid. Yeah. Really? And so I'm standing there, and the CNO, she's super sweet. She says, "Mary took nothing easy. She has been sick because she hasn't been able to eat for like 4 months. Drank protein shakes and soup every meal. Exercised anyway, even though she felt like crap. Had a bad gallbladder for 3 months, and everything made her sick. And you think it was easy?"
So Mary, this was a friend of yours though that said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Well, in the moment, I wanted to smack her upside the head because I mean, I was just like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And so I waited because, like, you know, my husband calls it Yankee Mary because I'm from up north, and when Yankee Mary comes out, it's pretty ugly. So I've learned to not. I walk away, and I said, "Thanks, Heather," and I turned around and walked away. And so I saw her, the person who said that, the following week, and I said, "You know, I have a couple things I want to say about our interaction last week. One, thanks for telling everyone I had weight loss surgery. Yeah, that was the end result of my surgery, but that's not why I had surgery to begin with.
And even if it was.
And even if it was, it wasn't anybody's business." I said, and two, I said, "You know, you really need to think about that, what you said, because if you
Mm-hmm.
I said, and you know, I don't know where that came from, but you really need to figure it out because the patients you take care of that either have had it in the past or are considering it, those are the kind of things that can really send somebody into a tailspin.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I know you and I know your heart, and that's not what you intended to do. And I was smart enough to walk away before my mouth said something that we couldn't overcome. But like, think about it.
I'm proud of you for circling back around and clearing that up. Did she apologize?
She felt horrible. She's like, oh my gosh, I wanted to, as soon as you turned around and walked away, I realized what I'd done, and I wanted to chase you down the hall. But I know you well enough that know that that wouldn't have ended well, so I didn't do it. And I was like, well, thank you for that, because it wouldn't have ended well, and I would have felt worse had I, you know, exploded at you for something I know you didn't mean the way it came out.
Absolutely. What about the rest of you and friends?
Just a few, the ones that I know I could trust, they know.
Yeah.
But other people, they don't know nothing.
And a lot of people choose to not share. There's a lot of celebrities that have had weight loss surgery. And you know, and they will even be so bold, and you'll see them quoted, "Oh, I just focused on exercise and whatever." And I know some of them. We actually had a lady come and speak at our support group, but it's like, you know, I wish they would just come right out, because it's great publicity for the bariatric community and for people to learn about weight loss surgery. And to say, hey, I tried everything else, this was the solution for me, and this is how I was successful. I wish they would say that, because it would help to kind of change some of the ignorance around it, the lack of knowledge around weight loss surgery and the connotation with it sometimes.
After a couple of years out, people, they're like, oh, I forgot you had it, you know, so it's out of their minds. I told people I really didn't care, but I've never had the problems that you all have. But is it wrong to just get mad and say, enough, am I upset? Well, yeah, I'm on an eating plan, and there is absolutely nothing here that's helping.
Yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with saying that? Throw it back at them, you know. I mean, everybody's different, you know. So there are days when and I've told people, I said, you know, I get tired of having to remind people that I can't do this or I can't do that.
Well, what's interesting?
I just want it to go away, but people just don't think about it.
I think thinking about your situation, I had I was going to an event, it was a very large event, and I reached out to the caterer. And
well, that's what I was going to say. Isn't it interesting when you've got events? They'll say, "Do you have allergies?" And people, you know, I'm gluten intolerant, so.
Well, I think part of what's caused it is one of the last, just about 3 or 4, just before this hit, one of the working sessions that we had in, oh gosh, I missed a long ago, that I had gotten into the habit. I just take my little bag of stuff, my food, and I eat it. And I was not with the group I was normally with. These are only like 2 or 3 of us from Claremont there. And the whole time I'm sitting there nibbling, and I'm getting the looks. And it just kind of
that's rude anyway.
I mean, it was just like, what difference does it make to you? I mean, the one thing I could do and turn around if somebody started to say something, I said, excuse me, I'm diabetic, I carry my own food. And that even felt like difference does it make to you if I'm sitting here with my little lunch box, nibbling my cheese and stuff through this whole freaking training.
You know, I see people a lot of times bring their lunch to meetings. I mean, shouldn't be a big deal, right? So we talked about career, we talked about friendships. Sometimes people can experience changes in their marriage. So I'll just share, none of our patients, right, because I came from a different program, but I have seen people go through weight loss surgery together, both of the people having weight loss surgery. And I've seen that be very successful because they were able to hold each other accountable. They were able to go out to dinner and share meals and different things like that. And so I know a few couples that have done that and been very successful. I've also seen couples to where one of them had surgery and the spouse be very supportive of them and want to help to encourage them and whatever they could do to support them. But at the same time, I've also seen some marriages fall apart because it didn't work very well. And so one of the struggles that sometimes people have is as one person goes through weight loss surgery and they begin to lose weight, a couple of things happen. Because for some people, as they lose weight, it starts to gain more attention for them and they're very uncomfortable with that. And that becomes an emotional situation where they've got to figure out, why am I feeling this way? Even recognizing it is a big to-do. And then for the other spouse, sometimes they get uncomfortable with the attention that their spouse is getting. And that can cause some turmoil and some issues there in the marriage. And so having a very open dialogue, and if we do end up struggling, counseling is a great opportunity, which could turn into couples counseling just to deal with those issues. Anybody want to share? You don't have to, because I know that's very personal, but I just wanted to put it out there that it can happen after weight loss surgery, and sometimes people don't anticipate that coming up because they're just thinking, hey, I'm going to lose some weight and get healthy, and then relationships can change. I have a really good friend of mine that actually made the decision to have weight loss surgery, and right immediately after her surgery, her husband filed for divorce, and so she found herself a single mom with twins, and here she was emotionally for herself going through this life change of trying to discover who the new her was, because, you know, she lost 90 pounds in a year, right? So she was trying to discover who she was, but then she found herself in a situation to where she was divorced and had never planned on that. And so sometimes that can happen. So
my husband's afraid that for some reason, like, I'm gonna lose weight and not want to be married to him anymore. He says stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't want to have to train somebody else. Like, I make a joke out of it because
yeah,
it's like, you know.
but it brings forward some of those things that sometimes you don't anticipate. And so at least he said something, and you guys can have that conversation of, well, what is really going to happen, you know? And it sounds like for him, he was feeling a little bit insecure because, hey, he's noticing that you've got a little bit more self-confidence, right? You're feeling good about yourself. People are giving you attention. And so sometimes that does bring up feelings of insecurity, and it's worth having a conversation about. So this article actually does talk about the changes, and it specifically does say this is not the easy way out, which we know, right? And so it talks about deciding to have the surgery in and of itself is a difficult decision and is very emotional as well, because you've got to think through, what is my relationship with food gonna be like? And then living with weight loss surgery is certainly not easy. And not only the physical pieces of it and figuring out what your new relationship with food is going to be, but how do you deal with emotions when food was your emotional friend? You know, that no matter what emotion that was, you went to. So, this part, it says, I realized I was no longer going to allow food to control me. Food issues become an addiction, and we must learn to no longer live to eat, but instead we learn to eat. Let's see, did I say that right? No longer live to eat, but instead we eat to live. And I actually had a young man say that at one of our last support groups. He had a daughter that was about to go through it. And saying that out loud is easier for some people than it is for others. If you've gone through that and you've gotten kind of in the routine of how your new eating is going, it may be easier. But for some that are earlier on in the journey, it's hard to understand that piece of it, because food has been such a big deal as far as, you know, going to for stress and emotions and things. In addition, we all go through a phase where you have a difficult time realizing who the new you is. And so as patients lose weight, who is this new thinner person? Who is that you're looking at in the mirror? Some patients go through a very vulnerable stage. They become afraid, they become uncomfortable. And it talks about, so a lot of obese individuals like to blend in with the crowd, but all of a sudden we're the focus of the attention, right? People pointing out that you've lost weight. And now people are watching what we're eating. They're asking us how much we've lost and even giving us compliments. I had one patient in particular, and this was several years ago as well, that had surgery, not necessarily for the weight loss, but had gastric bypass because of her diabetes. She had such severe diabetes. And her BMI was on that lower borderline. And if I remember correctly, because you remember the BMI requirements, right, of 35 or higher. If I remember correctly, I think she was somewhere around 34.5. Okay, but the physician had written a letter because of her severe diabetes, got it approved through insurance. So she was a lower BMI patient to go through weight loss surgery. She looked great, but she started getting comments from friends, even from other doctors at the hospital where she worked that weren't bariatric surgeons, right? That were making comments like, you look like you've lost too much weight. You're losing too much. Now you're starting to look, and so now she's starting to question herself. Am I starting to lose too much? Am I looking too thin? How am I? And so she went to her doctor, and her doctor reassured her she was at a good spot. People just weren't used to seeing her at that weight. They were used to seeing her heavier. And sometimes people will comment because they're not confident within themselves. And then they start projecting their feelings onto you. So I love what she did with that. She instead of answering that question of how much have you lost, and people are more open than others sometimes to share that, but she started saying, my doctor is very pleased with my progress. Thank you for asking. And that just kind of nipped it in the bud. But it let them know, my doctor's aware, and I'm being followed, and I'm doing very well. And so even when you start to get, maybe down to your goal weight, people may start to make comments that make you feel uncomfortable. Food is a central part of life. If you're an alcoholic, you can cure alcoholism by stopping to drink. Unfortunately, we got to have food to survive. And so it's very difficult, when we go through weight loss surgery, because you still got to eat, but you got to deal with those issues as well. So having talked about some of these things, here's some of the recommendations. Anybody else have anything else to share before we go forward with some of the tips? Okay. So steps to improving emotional adjustments with post-surgery. Follow your doctor's orders and recommendations. This means following the dietary changes from the start. Get lots of rest and take care of your physical needs. So the good thing about when the surgeons put you on one of these diets, right, they've got the dietitians in the office, and they're very willing to go over what your diet is going to be. But when you leave, that's when the hard part starts, right? And so that's why a support group is helpful. Having a friend or a mentor that you know that can help to keep you accountable is helpful. Talking through how you feel about it. But you guys also, and most of you already know that we have Giselle here in our program, and you can see Giselle as many times as you need to for free. So if you start to struggle, know that you can reach out, and you can reach out for help. So if you're starting to struggle a little bit on that full liquid and you need maybe some other things that you can throw in there that's a different flavor or something, I know a lot of the meal replacement shakes are very sweet. So then people start craving salty things. And I do, by the way, if you need upstairs, I've got some that are like a chicken noodle, kind of some salty flavor ones.
Online, and I ordered a thing of the Very Life high protein chicken soup.
Good. Something salty sometimes will mix it up for you.
Yeah, it's really good. Vietnamese noodle soup, and I just didn't have them put the noodles in it. It's a bone broth, so it has a lot of protein.
Yeah, and plus you gotta watch sodium and the calories in it, but Pacific Halo now has miso broth, pho broth, and ramen broth, as well as the veggie broths. So I just started looking at those for flavor without having to throw the noodles at my husband and say, eat it.
It's smart to branch out, though, and try to keep it interesting,
There's a pho restaurant in Oakwood on 53 by the Publix. It's called Saigon Deli, and they'll make it without the noodles.
They will?
Some no noodle.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go. Journaling. Now, a lot of people don't like journaling, but one of the important things, especially in a period of time where you're struggling, so a situation like kind of what you're going through right now, Or if you're pre-op and you're on that pre-liquid diet, or afterwards as you're beginning to kind of try to figure out how to eat again and drink again, and then you progress, journaling, even if you don't do it for a short period of time, if you can write down how you feel, and the reason I say that is because if you feel like you're hungry, is it always physical hunger?
No.
What is it? Head hunger, emotional hunger, what did you call it?
Comfort.
Comfort, right? And if you can name that emotion that you're feeling and then figure out what to do with that emotion, right? I had a patient, no joke, that had a magnet that she had on her refrigerator and it says, "Am I really hungry?" And underneath, kind of like when you go to the hospital and they ask you what your pain score is, and they've got the, what is it, Baker, Wong, or whatever, the happy face, the sad face, the mad face, or whatever. But it had the different emotions on there, and it said, "Are you really hungry?" And she would go, "Nope, I'm mad. And what am I going to do with that mad? You know, do I call a friend and do I vent? Do I go outside and go for a walk and take a shake or a water or something with me, get my mind off of it?" But being able to connect what emotion you're having at that moment, and is it really something that I need food for, or is it something that I need to take care of, either by having a conversation or whatever else that is, you know? You know, for some people it's take a hot bath, but to try to think through what emotion is this, and what other than food can I do to take care of that emotion?
That reminds me of something that I saw the other day. It said something to the effect of, "I guarantee you nothing in the fridge will fix fix the problem that's going wrong."
Mm-hmm.
Something to that effect.
Yep.
So yep, that's true.
Yep. But a lot of people struggle after surgery, not only immediately, but a while after as well, and sometimes further out, right? That's why this isn't the easy way out, because it's hard every step of the way. But to figure out, what do you do with that?
Right.
I like that saying. That's good. Mm-hmm.
I'll have to go back and find the exact wording. It's not the exact wording, but it was something similar to that.
Anything else that you guys can add that you've done before? If you were angry, you were mad, you were stressed out.
I just try to stay on the plan and just be structured with the time that I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
Try to focus on it in terms of that, so I don't get
Yep.
to those points.
So it becomes more of a habit for you, right?
Right. Which
Yep.
is easy Monday through Fridays. The weekends are a little more.
Agreed.
Weekends are my
But just try to, just those times. It's time to eat.
Yep.
Eat my 5 ounces or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anybody else?
I find there's people that intentionally, you said it, it's more of deflection of something they're feeling.
Yep.
And
They poke at you.
Yeah, and that's the situation I'm in with my boss. She's constantly wants to poke the bear, and so, I have to learn to not let her talk through my self-talk.
Yes.
When she goes, "Well, I imagine it must be hard for you to know what looks good on you now that your body's changed so much." And it's like, I dress better than you every single day. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
See me
Yeah. Yeah. So this next one says, set realistic goals and expectations. For many, goals may be getting off their medication, walking without getting winded, or the ability to cross their legs. So whatever your goals are, make sure that you write them down and modify them as needed. Can I share the app that you shared with me this week? So there is an app actually that I downloaded about a week ago, and it's called Progress Tracker. And in the Progress Tracker app, there's a portion if you go further, you have to pay for it. But for the free part, it will allow you to set your goal for yourself. But every day or whenever you choose to go get weighed in or measurements, it allows you to add your new weight and your measurements. And there's even a section in there for your percent of body fat, which we do have a machine upstairs that will calculate that, like what percent is muscle, what percent is fat. But Progress Tracker was one of the apps I found that was really good for that. But you found one called Bariatrics.
I've been using that for years.
Have you? Love
I've
it.
used it for a year.
Love it. So you can do, I think on both of them, you can do your pre-op picture, your updated picture. But one of the things that I have always found very helpful, and I'm kind of jumping to one of the other tips, but is to take lots of pictures of yourself, because when you have that moment where you're looking in the mirror and trying to figure out who is that looking at me, it's very helpful if you can put all of that information together, not just the number on the scale, because you are not defined by a number. Okay?
Sometimes it's helpful to have a picture because the way you see yourself in the mirror isn't reality.
Right? But being able to recognize and see that difference in yourself when you put those pictures side by side, but on top of that, especially if you were to hit a plateau, right? Because even weight loss surgery patients don't lose from point A to point B. You guys drop, then you plateau, and then you drop, and then you plateau. But even when you're on the plateau, what do you do to stay motivated? Because sometimes you get on that plateau and you're thinking, well, this is it. Just like diet, right? I've hit, this is all I'm gonna get. But if you can stay consistent, like you said, with your routine, and you stay consistent with the protein and not eating between meals and drinking your fluid, it will kick back in. But your body has to take a break, because your body drops and it has to go, whew, that was a lot of work burning all those calories, right? And then it has to get back into gear and go, okay, let's do it again, and then it drops. But being able to see the number of inches that you lost, even if that number maybe hasn't changed in a little bit, sometimes your inches between your waist and your hips and things will change too. So one of my other goals, so that you guys know, during support group, is I actually have a bariatric size scale that I've requested to have move over here so we can put it in this closet. So we have a space that whenever you guys want, and we can do it upstairs if you like, but you can get weighed, you can get your measurements, that sort of thing, because I think it's extremely important for you to be able to put the two and two together. If other people are seeing the change, I can't see the change, and if you can't, then you need to feed a little bit more information to your brain so that you can have that mind-body kind of connection. One of the therapists I used to work with, also, one of her tips, like if you're really trying to connect yourself with your new body, is to take a bath. And I know some of the guys may not like this suggestion, right? But go with me here. But to take a bath and close your eyes, and literally, kind of similar to what we were doing just now in our yoga class, right? Feel your body, and to really try to feel where your body is positioned in that bathtub, and feel the water touch your body, and you can kind of connect, okay, this is the new me. And so it really was a mind-body kind of connection, exercise. But for some patients, they're like, you know what, I tried that and it worked. What were you going to say?
I'm just laughing a little bit because at a point where I was pretty much, I had lost and then gained a bit back at menopause, and then dropped back down again after open heart, after a double heart bypass. And at the point when I was at my lowest prior to the menopause, I had gotten dental work done, and I can remember first time I put in my dentures, and my face was so thin. My husband came in and caught me in front of the mirror crying, and he's why? I said, because I look like a freaking skeleton, honey. It just seemed so
drastic to you.
Wrong. Like I was a skeleton all of a sudden. And up to that point, I'd been fine with the weight loss. I'd been fine with where my weight had gotten down to, but it was just that first moment of seeing the thinner face and the difference with the dentures in, and I couldn't stand it. I mean, it wasn't me anymore. So sometimes that's risky if you don't have somebody there to support you when you do it.
Yep, that's a good point. Thank you for sharing that.
It was not an easy moment.
And also, when you lose, and you do get to, your upper half of your body, gets thinner quicker than the bottom half, that Go hang anywhere.
And you've worked so hard to get there. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, not everybody is interested or in a position to do the skin removal surgery, and that's a question that we get a lot beforehand, you know. And I know many of you have discovered different undergarments and things that you can use, right, that hold you in and make it so that it kind of pulls you up and firms you and things like that. So there are some tricks that you can use like that. We had, I think it was Dr. Devuti who came not long ago talking about the different options and things, and so, but not everybody's in a position to do that. And I can definitely see how frustrating that would be, for sure. Now you guys know why I started with we've got a list of therapists, right? Seriously, there's a lot of emotional things, you know, that get discounted sometimes.
Well, it's hard to see yourself the way other people see you. It takes a long time. I don't think it ever really goes away. And so when people plant those seeds, like, oh, it must be hard to know what looks good on me.
So then you start questioning yourself, right?
And so it's like, well, do I or don't I? I thought I was looking pretty good. You know, and it's easy to let people get in your head.
Right.
And then, you know.
Well, and to Mary's point, you may not see yourself the way that others see yourself, right? But you see yourself a whole lot more in a whole bunch of different other situations than other people do, and so that's very personal, and we all have feelings about our own bodies and things like that, but it's helpful if you can talk to somebody and get that out and be able to process that, because you have come a very long way, and it was hard work, you know. The next one talks about reflect on the past. Although it is important to move on, it's also important for patients to remember the moment when they decided to have weight loss surgery. It's sort of like we have hit our low or bottom to realize that we have to change. But I would also just interject in there too, is that although there may be things like excess skin, because I know a lot of women have issues here, like behind their arms, the abdomen area, hips, and things like that. I know that there are things that sometimes we're not pleased with after weight loss surgery, but it is helpful to go back and say, but where was I before, and what positive came out of that? Because we've got to be able to weigh it, right? Seek help. It is important to ask for help if you find that you're having difficulty adjusting to the many changes after surgery. Seek support group, and so that you guys know we do have YouTube Live and that sort of thing if you guys can't make support group, but it is live. Seek support from family, friends, or a professional counselor. So some counselors, guys, specifically specialize not only in eating disorder